Wait, I just want to tell you, I started my career. So my first newspaper job was Nashville. I went to Nashville and I was like this cocky 22-year-old New Yorker. I was like, I'm never gonna like country music. There's no way I'm gonna be a guy who likes country music. And it's funny, man. Dixie Chicks, Earl Haggard, George Jones, Tanya Tucker, blah, 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 blah. Like I was all in. I'm still all in. I still think the line between country and hip hop actually is not as thick as people think because of these dramatic storytellers and it's sort of the emotive elements of music. And, I became a country guy.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to a new episode of Set Listing Bruce, your podcast all about Bruce Springsteen, his music, and mostly his fans. We are getting off the Bruce Springsteen train today, but I'm sure he will come up as he normally does. And we're getting on the sports bus. One of my favorite writers. I loved his book on the Cowboys. Jeff Pearlman is joining me. We're going to talk a little bit about his musical fandom and his new book. So, Jeff, welcome to the show.
I just want to say, so I can stay in character, I'm going to be the first guy ever to appear on your show and say my favorite Springsteen song, and I'm not a huge Springsteen guy in the way you are, is Tunnel of Love.
That is, if I get pushed to shove, that's probably one of my favorite albums. It definitely is my top three. Yeah, I love that album. I think I've talked about this a lot, Jeff. I think you have to have a few miles on you or you're heartbroken a few times before Tunnel of Love speaks to you. Because I think it is a really cool album.
Yeah. So there you go. Tunnel of Love.
Yeah. So, all right, tell us about yourself.
I'm a journalist and sports writer. I am from a tiny town, Mahopac, New York. I went to University of Delaware. I started my career as a food and fashion writer for the Nashville Tennessean. I eventually moved on to Sports Illustrated. I covered Major League Baseball for a long time. I wrote my first book back about 20 years ago now. It was called The Bad Guys Won, about the 86 Mets. I've since written 10 books. Bo Jackson is my 10th book. And I live in California and I have no complaints. And Tunnel of Love is my favorite Bruce Springsteen song.
Let's start at the beginning and then I'm going to get to your writing, but I always like to start. What kind of music did your family listen to? What kind of music did you grow up listening to as a kid?
Okay, almost none. I grew up with parents who did not play a lot of music. However, I had a few things in my life. First of all, when maybe I was 12, I bought my brother for probably Hanukkah, we're Jewish, a couple of records. And one of them was H2O by Hall & Oates. And I don't even know if he ever listened to that record, but I listened to it over and over again. And I loved, from that moment on, Hall & Oates, and became a huge, enormous Hall & Oates fan for years and can tell you the whole catalog and the tracks and blah, blah, blah. And then the other thing that happened is I was in high school and my best friend was a kid named John Powell. And he told me about this group, Public Enemy. And I was like, Public Enemy? And we're listening to these songs on Public Enemy. And there was a song called Black Steel in the Hour of Chaos about Chuck D, the lead rapper of Public Enemy, breaking out of prison in a prison riot. I was like, oh my God. So I would say my lifelong loves, or since then lifelong loves, of Hall & Oates and hip hop. Like I became a huge, huge hip hop fan. And I've gone with my son. My son's a big hip hop kid. So recently we've gone to a lot of concerts, a lot of shows, and I've thrown myself into the hip hop universe.
I love that. So what's kind of in that small world category, I just had a guy, Mike Blanchard, join me. He's a huge Daryl Hall and John Oates fan. Mm-hmm. And we just did an H2O episode discussing that album and breaking it down, track the anniversary. Yes, no kidding. I can send you the link. And there is a new podcast, Out of Touch, where two friends, they have known each other since elementary, are going through Daryl Hall and John Oates songs one by one in no particular order. And it's just an excuse for them to kind of talk about their lives, but they are talking about that. It's called Out of Touch. And I was on that podcast and they joined me here. So I love they're incredibly successful. They still, make music together. They tour every once in a while. So I do think it's funny that, Sarah Smile and Kiss along with Public Enemy and hip hop, right? It is just like yin and yang of your musical loves.
Well, what's funny is Hall and Oates have probably been sampled more than any other mainstream artist in hip hop. Because if you
I
think
did
about,
not know that.
oh yeah, if you think about especially the song, the song "I Can't Go for That."
Sure.
It starts with this real heavy bass, and it's like din 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 din.
Oh yeah.
That is sampled all the time. And Hall and Oates have made. I was just interviewing a rapper the other day, and I mentioned Hall and Oates. He's like, "Oh, I freaking love Hall and Oates. Like, I love Hall and Oates." And yeah, they cross over a lot. Like Hall and Oates cross over a lot into the hip hop universe. One thing that I don't know how you feel about this stuff. I was watching actually an interview recently with Daryl Hall, and he was just crapping all over Oates, basically saying like, "I do all the work, and we're not really partners," and blah blah. He was just crapping all over him.
Yeah.
And I always think, like I was saying to my wife, like nobody wants to hear that. Like 75-year-old Daryl Hall, at least let us live the illusion that you guys are buddies and you team up together and you're sitting in an apartment writing. Like nobody wants to hear Bruce Springsteen dumping on old albums. Nobody wants to hear Daryl Hall dumping on his partner. We just want to enjoy the music. It actually keeps me from dumping on books that I've written that I don't like, because I feel like somewhere out there's probably someone who really likes that book. So why am I taking a dump on it?
Yeah, like I know that there was for a while, like Art Garfunkel, Paul Simon, have this, and you kind of wish that you didn't know that.
Yeah.
And I'm a big Penn and Teller fan, especially Penn Jillette. I just love his podcast. I just read his latest novel that's really good, Random. And he talks about the interview that he and Teller are not the best of friends, yet they, he says, but if his daughter pushes him, he said, yeah, he probably is, one of my best friends. He says, we don't socialize a lot together because we spend all this time together. And you don't want to hear that. I want to hear that little Steven and Bruce like hanging together outside of music, right?
Yeah. Even though they probably don't, or maybe they do, or it doesn't even matter. Like all this stuff is illusion. Like we like thinking in sports that teammates are buddies and they're all hanging out together. I mean, NFL roster as an example is so enormous. There are certain guys in that locker room who would never talk to each other once. Or we like hearing athletes, baseball players talk about, we as a team just came together, blah, blah, blah. But the truth behind it all is there are guys who hate each other, who don't know each other, who don't even speak the same language, blah, 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 blah. But we want the illusion. It's part of it. When I heard Hall dumping on Oates, I was thinking, all right, man, so go tour on your own. See how many people show up. Like people want Hall and Oates, whether you like that or not. People want you both. They don't want to go see Daryl Hall in concert or John Oates in concert. They want to see Hall and Oates. So shut your mouth, count your money, and live the life. Go on your yacht.
In Little Steven's book, he talked about that when he tours, he doesn't even get 10% of the people that go see the E Street Band. He's, if I could just get 10% of the people who go to the E Street Band, I would have a very successful, solo tour, but I can't. He goes, and I don't get the connection.
Because people are looking for an experience. People want the experience. It's like, I mean, Daryl Hall actually sings 90% of Hall and Oates songs. So like, if you just see Hall in concert, it sounds exactly the same.
Right.
Like he actually has a point. Like his point isn't wrong. He is kind of the brains of Hall and Oates.
Yeah.
But like, people are looking for more than just music. They're looking for an experience and in a way, illusion. So.
Yeah, I love that. Did you always know you wanted to be a writer?
I mean, from a very young age, I did. My dad wrote a book. My dad self-published a book in 1986. He was a executive search guy, and he owned his own company, and he self-published a book. It was called Conquering the Corporate Career. He did it all on his own. And I remember we lived in New York, and the big bookstore in New York was Walden Books. And I remember the book being in Walden Books. And I remember we would sneak into the bookstore, take his book, move it from the back, and put it in the bestseller section.
Sure.
And then put it back, and we'd move it back. I just was so inspired by that and so enamored by that. And also, nobody in my family cared about music when I was a kid, and nobody cared about sports. And the only section of the New York Times I was allowed to bring in the bathroom was the sports section. So my mom would allow that. So I would sit in the bathroom for hours. Jeff, are you ever coming out? Pouring through the sports pages, reading everything, absorbing it. And then I wrote for my, a pretty standard thing. I was the sports editor of my high school newspaper, the Mailpack High School Chieftain. I was editor of my college paper, the University of Delaware Review. And I just sort of fell in love with a lot of, I loved writing, but I really loved talking to people and digging into people's lives and finding out what made them tick. And I love that as a journalist, you're just allowed to do that. It's kind of like hosting a podcast. You actually get to ask questions you want to ask. It's kind of
yes, it exactly is. It is just, I love that. Where do you think the love of sports came from? Since you hear all the stories, especially in New England, right? Yankee grandfathers to fathers to sons, Red Sox, how did you become the black sheep of the family and loving sports?
I mean, we used to joke that I was adopted.
Okay.
I think I don't know, I can't explain it fully, right? First of all, when I was a kid, I just grew up in a neighborhood where a lot of kids were playing sports. So I would play sports and play basketball in the yard, Kill the Carrier, and Dennis Gargano's yard up the street, Gary Miller's backyard. We'd be having relay races and all that stuff, right? So that stuff. And but there was something, this is going to sound BS, but it's not. Like, I grew up in a very, very white, very, very socially stilted town. And I remember, like, I would go to the library, my local library, Mailpack Public Library, and I would read Sports Illustrated. I would gobble them up. And it would be guys with afros and guys with a million chains dangling around their necks and guys with names like Malik and Jose and Joaquin. And maybe you'd see an athlete smoking a cigarette in a really cool old school Pittsburgh Pirates uniform. Like, it was so freaking colorful. And it was so not what I was seeing at home. It was just so, it sounds corny, and it was so diverse. Like, it was all this stuff, and it was so colorful, like just so colorful. And I just remember, like, there was a sprinter, he has since passed, named Houston McTear. And the name alone, Houston McTear, I was like, that's a great name. And I remember Muhammad Ali fought Leon Spinks. And there's a cover of Sports Illustrated where Leon Spinks, he didn't have his two front teeth in it. It's him smiling widely. He's got this mini afro and his two teeth are missing and stuff like that. I can't even explain it. It just, maybe it's the same with music with you. Like, it just did it for me. It just did it for me. And like, the one thing about being a sports writer that's been awesome, truly, is like the opportunity to explore those worlds, the opportunity to go places you would never go, the opportunity to go places that 99% of people I grew up with never have stepped into, like I immerse myself into. And I love everything about that. I'm so thankful for this career.
That, I love that because I grew up, I was born in 59. My dad was in the Army. We moved around a lot. And so, but a lot of our times was a very, like when we finally retired, my mom and dad divorced. I grew up in Lake Charles, Louisiana. My parents weren't sports fans at all. They did not have a team or, of professional or college. They followed a lot of music, a lot of country music. And so I, at the same time, was the same thing, that very secluded, very white Southern Baptist growing up, that these people seemed odd and strange, except about music. And at music, I was fascinated by all the different things.
Wait, I just want to tell you, I started my career. So my first newspaper job was Nashville. And I went to Nashville, and I was like this cocky 22-year-old New Yorker. I was like, I'm never going to like country music. There's no way I'm going to be a guy who likes country music. And it's funny, man. Dixie Chicks, Earl Haggard, George Jones, Tanya Tucker, blah, 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 blah. Like, I was all in. I'm still all in. I still think the line between country and hip hop actually is not as thick as people think, because of these dramatic storytellers and sort of the emotive elements of music. And So, you know, I
When
became a country guy.
when Ken Burns' documentary of country music talked about that, where they'll talk about, a lot of Long Black Veil or these, murder ballads, and then you look at hip hop, there is that connection that's
Oh
pretty
yeah.
cool.
Yeah.
So I love that growing up. When you decided to write your first book, how'd you pick the subject, and why did you want to explore? Why, obviously, loving sports, loving writing, is that why you're like, okay, why don't I put like peanut butter and chocolate together, these two great things together? Is that why you started with the sports book?
Not really. I
Okay.
was at Sports Illustrated. I was a baseball writer. A very good friend of mine is named John Wertheim, and
Hmm.
he's a longtime writer. And we were coming up together, and he wrote a book called Venus Envy about Venus and Serena Williams. And it was really the first time I strongly considered writing a book. And I was like, it was almost like the competitive juices in me, which is stupid, but wow, he wrote a book, I could write a book. And around that time, an agent approached me, Susan Reed, and she said, have you ever thought about writing a book? And I was like, well, I don't know. And she came up with this idea. She said, what about the 86 Mets? And I was in 1986, I was 13, 14. I love that team. I love those characters. And I thought, yeah, I could do that. I didn't know what I was doing. I wrote a book proposal. I got a book deal. Um, I really like the immersive elements of book writing. I like that you have 2 years and they just leave you alone and you just dive in. I love that I can spend a lot of my time in coffee shops. I mean, I love that scene. Um, and it's torturous. It definitely is torturous, but it's also joyful. And that was my first book, and I didn't know what to expect. And it made the bestseller at the New York Times list, which I didn't expect at all. And it kind of sent me on my way. And here I sit.
Yeah, I can imagine. You're like, wow. Um, so I have to spend some time, to give it a little background, just so you'll know. Grew up, no sports allegiance at all. Um, a lot of people, my first college roommate loved the Saints, so I would watch the Saints on Sunday with him, really having no allegiance, just because David loved them. So I'm cheering for, um,
Archie Manning
Archie
and
Manning. Yeah, exactly. And
Chuck Muncie,
yeah,
Wes Schindler.
exactly. Yeah. And then in 86, my wife and I moved to Dallas, and it is in the water. It is in the atmosphere. I mean, like, I was a fan of talk radio. Find a talk radio station, and they're doing sports. Norm Hitzges,
Oh,
is
I
in
know
the
Norm.
morning,
Yeah, of
right?
course.
Yeah. And all of a sudden, you be I'd become a Cowboy fan, and then because of that, a Mavericks fan and a Ranger fan. And to this day, like, if the Cowboys aren't in the playoffs, I don't watch much of the playoffs. Now, my son is a traditional, he loves sports all the way around. So I remember those Aikman, Emmett, Jimmy Johnson, Michael, the triplets and all those years. I loved it. And I just shared, I reread your Boys Will Be Boys book, and you captured so much of the craziness and the hypocrisy of that team. So tell me a little bit of why you decided to talk about the 90s Cowboys, and anything you want to share about that book.
Yeah, I mean, big characters, number one. I grew up a Jets fan in New York,
Yeah.
but huge characters. I mean, you want to put yourself in a position where you can sell.
Yeah.
And Michael Irvin, Emmett Smith, Troy Aikman are three enormous football characters on the same team. Jimmy Johnson, Barry Switzer, Jerry Jones. It's a lot of big characters. It's a team that's national. Um, and it hadn't been done. Like, there hadn't been a book yet. I kind of struck gold with that one. No one had written the book yet on the 90s Cowboys.
Yeah.
Um, it was really cool. It was actually a really cool experience. First of all, one of the great moments of my life journalistically is I snuck into Michael Irvin's Hall of Fame party. Like, literally snuck in. Like, it was at a tent on the grounds of the Hall of Fame in Canton, Ohio. And I was there with a friend of mine named Michael Lewis. And the two of us snuck under the tent and broke into his party. And I'm walking around this party, and there's security guards all over, and I keep dodging the security guards. And I had this moment like the book opens with Michael Irvin stabbing a teammate named Everett McIver in the neck with a pair of barber scissors. And it ends with Michael Irvin dancing with his wife to the Pointer Sisters were playing at his party, to a Pointer Sisters song at this party, this Hall of Fame party. And I've never had a better full circle beginning end of a book, where it starts with him as this crazed, drug addicted asshole stabbing a teammate in the neck with a pair of scissors. And it ends with him finding himself. And he's at the Hall of Fame and he's loving his wife, who he's cheated on ceaselessly, but she's stuck by him. So I will never forget breaking into Michael Irvin's Hall of Fame party. And the other thing is, if I have a regret from that book, which I do, like I write a lot about Charles Haley. And, you know, Charles Haley was masturbating in front of teammates. Charles Haley was doing all sorts of crazy, crazy shit. And then later you find out that he was diagnosed as bipolar. And, you know, you learn as you're in this business, like there's a line between funny and making fun.
Yeah.
And I didn't know he was bipolar, but I probably could have taken an educated guess. And that book takes some shots at him that are probably unfair for a guy. Like I wouldn't have done it if he was missing an arm. I wouldn't be making one arm jokes. And this is the same as missing an arm. It's an actual disease. So I look and I cringe at that a little bit, because he was a character who we talked about over and over again. Every time I promoted the book, people would ask about Haley. Ha ha, Haley. Oh, Haley pleasuring himself in front of teammates and Haley doing this. And you look back and say he has a mental illness. So.
Yeah, you tell the story that one of the ways Switzer broke the ice is he asked about Haley not exposing himself, like to Switzer, right? Like, hey, aren't I one of the guys to kind of break the ice?
Yeah.
There's a lot of talk here in Dallas, and I'd love your opinion, you know, that Switzer doesn't get a lot of credit for any success the team had. It is purely Jimmy's shadow. As we're recording this, Jerry Jones turns 80 today. Wow. And they are talking about that. He said in an interview, because Jerry will be crazy, well, I'll GM for another 10, 15 years. So like, okay, Jerry. You know, and he is desperate to win another Super Bowl out of Jimmy's shadow. I know Aikman is very honest about how hard this came for him once Johnson left. So any thoughts about, you know, Switzer as a coach or that Cowboy legacy?
I mean, first of all, everyone, like, Barry Switzer's a really nice guy and a really enjoyable guy and a fun guy. And he was great for this book and everything. I mean, I hate dumping on a guy, but like, he really walked into an amazing situation where he had a team that was so preposterously talented that I can't say it would have been hard not to win a Super Bowl, but he walked into a great situation. He was not a great NFL coach. He was not disciplined enough. The problem with that team and their undoing in a lot of ways was they just had a lot of guys who really enjoyed snorting coke and drinking and womanizing and staying out till 4 a.m. And a lot of those guys were not as focused on football. And the reason Jimmy Johnson worked is because he was that team of all teams needed a disciplinarian coach, and Switzer was kind of a mess. So I think he deserves credit because he did factually coach that team to Super Bowl and they won. And there was definitely, you can make an argument. It's not easy to walk in the shadows of another coach.
Sure.
On the other hand, I can't say he was a great NFL coach. He wasn't.
Yeah. So I really recommend, whether you're a Cowboys fan or not, picking up that book. There's some great stories about Dale Hansen and, you know, Barry. You address Skip Bayless's being very unkind and really unprofessional because he wants to sell books. I know they asked Aikman, because he does a weekly show on the Ticket here in Dallas, and they asked him, I think, right when Fox signed Bayless, he said, yeah, I told them I didn't think they should. And to this day, I don't know if I was in the same room with him, I wouldn't hit him.
Yeah, well, he did something you don't do. Like, you don't do. And I don't even mean journalistically. I mean ethically as a human being. Like, he basically first of all, you don't out someone, period. Like, you don't out someone. You just don't do it. You don't do it. You certainly didn't do it 20 years ago because it was still
Right.
viewed as much more of a taboo now. I mean, at least now we live in a society where I mean, it's not even, like it's not even that big a deal anymore in
Right.
the same way, at least.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, and also I don't think Trey Aikman's gay apparently. So
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
not only did you out him, but like, I think Skip did some really shitty things. And I think like, first of all, I mean, just journalistically, right? It was like Troy Aikman went to a gay club. Let's just say, and let's even say that's true. Let's just say
Right.
hypothetically, Troy Aikman is spotted in a gay club. For all you know, he's hanging out with his buddy. For all you know, he's hanging out with
Yeah,
a sibling, with a cousin. You have no idea. For all
exactly.
you know, his best friend is in there and he's depressed and he's going there to see him, or it's his birthday party and he's going to celebrate. You have
Right.
no remote idea why Troy Aikman is going to a gay club. Um, so it just was grotesque. And maybe Skip realizes now all these years later. I don't know Skip, so maybe
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, I know. There was a time when I really enjoyed his writing, when he was a columnist here in
He was
Dallas. But
great. He
yeah,
was
I mean,
great.
yeah. And I remember the Aikman Turner Overdrive was one of the puns he made when uh Aikman was there and North Turner. So good. Anyway, going back, so let's talk about the new book. Let's talk about why you decided to talk about Bo Jackson and tell me a little bit what you found out.
Did you know about Bo Jackson's an enormous Bruce Springsteen fan?
I did not know that.
I'm just kidding. I made that up.
Okay, wow, that would be
Yeah.
good. Well, we just talked about Kareem Abdul-Jabbar
Yeah.
it turns out.
Awesome.
So, yeah.
Yeah. I am a nostalgist. It's my number one driving thing about sports and food and music is I'm nostalgic. And when I was growing up, I'm a little younger than you. I was growing up and I had Bo Jackson posters on my wall. And I thought he was a mythical figure. And I I just like there hadn't been a great book written about Bo Jackson. He wrote his own autobiography with Dick Schaap in 1990, and it was a good sports autobiography. Nothing against it; it was good, but
Yeah.
that's a long time ago. And one of the things that happened in the process of this book that was really interesting reporting wise. I reached out to Bo early on. He called me back, but told me he wasn't going to help me. He was nice about it. He wasn't a jerk, but he's like, I'm
Yeah.
not, it just doesn't interest me. And it turns out, so Dick Schaap is a legendary sports writer. He's since deceased. His son is Jeremy Schaap of ESPN. And it turns out after Bo Knows Bo, Dick Schaap donated all his interview transcripts and tapes to the Auburn University Library. So I was able to buy hundreds and hundreds of pages of interviews Bo Jackson did in 1990 that have never been published before. And that was enormous for me. So like I have this treasure trove of Bo Jackson Q&As and Bo Jackson interviews and things he probably didn't even want out at the time because they didn't appear in the book. And that was for me a big sort of breakthrough, is being able to see the thinking of Bo Jackson as a 28-year-old in his prime on the page. So
The last folk hero, the life and myth of Bo Jackson, he has become this mythological figure, right? The idea of being great at two sports, not just good at two sports, but great at two sports.
Yeah. Well, there aren't that many. There's Deion Sanders, there's Jim Thorpe.
Yeah.
Brian Jordan, I guess. Not a ton. And I think he's mythical. There's a writer named Joe Posnanski who actually originally called him the last folk hero, and I really liked it. And I took it. I told Joe. And because a lot of his things, like, you don't see. There's a famous throw of Bo Jackson throwing out Harold Reynolds, a famous clip of Bo Jackson making this throw and nailing Harold Reynolds at home plate. It's been seen a million times. And Posnanski said to me, if you look at it, you don't actually see Bo Jackson releasing the ball because it was the camera cut away. It wasn't multi-camera angles. So did he throw the ball? Did he release the ball? What was the arm angle like? What was he doing? What did he grunt? Did he blow? No one knows because it wasn't captured on video. And he was really the last super mega star to come along who did these things and you couldn't see it all. Like he played for the Royals. Well, you couldn't watch a Royals game everywhere in America. There was no ticket or whatever. There was no MLB network.
Right.
So many things that were built up. He climbed the wall. What? He climbed the wall? Yeah, you got to see it. He climbed the wall. And a lot of people didn't see that immediately, him climbing the wall in Baltimore. You had to wait. Now you can go on YouTube and see it whenever you want. So there's a mythical element to the man that's really interesting.
What surprised you the most after getting into the research?
Well, I was going to say his love of Bruce Springsteen, but that would not
Yes.
be accurate. I mean, one thing that's really intriguing about the guy, because you don't see it that often, like people will be like, is Bo Jackson upset that he's not in the Baseball Hall of Fame? I'm like, no. Is he upset he's not in the Football Hall of Fame? No. Is he upset that his career was cut short because of injury? No. Like, he's a rare guy who just, he did it. He loved it. He had a great time. He was a great athlete. He moved on. He was done. And it's so refreshing. Like, it's actually really refreshing. I mean, there are millions of stories about him as an athlete that were surprising. But the thing that I think I'll always think of about Bo Jackson that I love is he didn't need to be Bo Jackson. Like, he didn't need that. He didn't need the glow. Bo Jackson lives in suburban Chicago today. There's no way you knew that because I didn't know that. He like shovels his own driveway. He drives a Ford truck. He runs a bunch of businesses. He's just his own guy. It's just, he's just his own guy. It's weird.
Yeah, because I was just sitting here thinking while you were talking, I wonder when is the last time I heard from him and like, what is he doing? And he just totally has just, I mean, it isn't like he's, I assume a hermit. He's just not after any spotlights at all, I take it.
Yeah, he doesn't care. He actually doesn't care. He does autograph shows, makes a little money that way. He works as a spring instructor with the White Sox and the Royals. He runs a bunch of food companies. He's had a bunch of products over the years. He has his money. I always say, like, if I'm being honest, like,
yeah,
you can make an argument the best thing that happened for that guy was getting hurt because I don't need to see a 12-year NFL veteran, Bo Jackson, with CTE, stumbling around, slurring over words. Like, I always think athletes like Barry Sanders, athletes like Bo, who left and were like, yeah, I'm kind of done, or I'm good, or I can't do it anymore, really were the smart ones. And he didn't do it on purpose. He got hurt, but I think it worked out well for him.
Yeah, like, and we can talk about like Emmitt Smith the last 2 years with Denver. No, not the Denver with the Cardinals, or other players that go back and do. So you don't wish injury on anyone, but there is that beautifulness of pristine, right?
Yep.
Hey, they're doing that. Oh, that's interesting. So the book is due out soon, I take
October
it, right?
25th.
Okay, October 25th. Good. I will make sure this is out before then.
Wait, I have to tell you one thing. I thought
Yes.
I mentioned this, maybe I didn't. So I'm on the Today Show on October 24th,
Okay.
and which is for sports author, enormous.
Yeah.
The deal was nothing can come out before then. So if you could run on the 24th or after, I'd appreciate it.
No, absolutely. You did mention that, and thank you for the reminder. Yes, I will do that. Yeah. In fact, I'll probably time this so that it's on the 25th. We'll release it there.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
Let's talk Lakers and HBO, right? How involved were you this? What are your thoughts on that? Because I will tell you, my son and I enjoyed the series, but we took it for what it was. It was kind of a fun little, not necessarily, this is not a Ken Burns documentary. This is just having fun with larger than life characters.
I think that's the best way to take it. I really do. That's what it is. It's a fun series. First of all, I always say to everyone, and this isn't a defense of anything, it's just a reality. Like, pick your favorite sports movie based on a true event. And it's not a documentary. So if you love We Are Marshall, which I don't, but if you love We Are Marshall, there's so much. If you love Remember the Titans, if you love Rudy, like they take a lot of liberties in sports movies and sports TV shows. It just is. And I asked Tracy Letts, who plays Jack McKinney on the show, I was like, I don't know, is it conflicting to you at all? And he's like, no, because real life is boring. And like, are we just going to show Jerry West going to meetings all day? Like, you can't do that. It doesn't work that way. Makes sense to me. So for me, it's been magical, truly magical. I'm a producer on season 2, which doesn't mean that much, but they send me all the scripts and I go through everything. And I've been involved in like sort of the casting reels and watching everything and offering my opinions. They've been lovely. We got to my wife, my kids and I were all in the pilot episode. We went on set, we went to the premiere party. They pay me. I mean, it's any writer who can have this happen to them, I strongly suggest it. Don't say no. It's pretty sweet.
Yeah. Who is the I can't remember. There was a famous writer, right? That someone said aren't you unhappy with what Hollywood did to your book? And he points to the shelf and says, my book's fine right there. Nothing has happened to my book.
That's a good response. Also, like you could say, my kid's in college right now. You know why? Because I can pay for her education thanks to this show. So
yeah,
I don't know. Yeah. It's been good.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with that. So you got to see, what do you think season 2 is going to be just as much fun?
I hope so. I've
It
read the
sounds
script.
good.
They're great.
That's great.
Yeah, no, it's great. It's been a thrill. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm the least Hollywood person I probably imaginable. I don't know very much about anybody. I don't like, people drop names and I'll be like, I don't know who that is. But I really enjoyed this process a lot.
So what's next? Obviously you're going to be promoting your latest book, your 10th, as you mentioned. Yep. What's next for you career-wise?
I don't know, actually. I kind of taking a little break. I've been working on, kind of focus on the show. I've been working on a podcast series idea with a friend of mine. There's so much you can do in media nowadays, and so many channels that, I mean, I know I'll write another book at some point, but I think, I don't know. I got to figure it out, actually. I don't have a great answer. Maybe I'll become a Springsteen impersonator.
There you go. Or, you could, could write a E Street Band tell-all.
Haven't there already been? Haven't there been plenty of Springsteen books?
There has been tons of Bruce books, including his own autobiography. Good. While I got you, anything else you want to promote while I visit? Any other, like I said, you have done a ton of everything from, Roger Clemens to, Brett Favre. Talk to me, other books that you may want to talk about, share, or other stories.
Well, I'll tell you this. My wife is a writer too, and she had a book that just came out. She's a parenting writer, and she has a book called First Phone, which is awesome because she's the best mom I've ever seen. And she wrote a book strictly about phone etiquette, phone access for your kids, and how to raise your kids in the digital age. And it's really, really good. It's sold a ton of copies. So I always, like promoting my wife because she's outstanding.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you this. Yeah, First Phone.
First Phone, A Child's Guide to Digital Responsibility, Safety, and Etiquette.
Yep.
It looks very cool. Catherine Pearlman is the writer, so absolutely. Yeah. Gotta give a plug to the better half.
Of course.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I would say this, like I said this on social media. I wrote a Brett Favre book years ago. It recently came out that Brett Favre was stealing welfare money to pay for a volleyball arena. If there's one book of mine, maybe not to read, I'd make it the Brett Favre book. Because I said this on social media. There are better people to devote your time to than a guy like that. So don't read the Brett Favre book. How's that?
That is very disappointing. It is. And I realize, there you have to go through due process, but it appears that this is a POS.
Yes.
And that this is
horrible. I mean, we already knew it, man. That's a thing.
Yeah.
That's what bothers me about me and everyone. He sent pictures of his penis to a female reporter when he was playing for the Jets. Like, why did we forgive him for that? Like, why were we just like, oh, that's okay. It's all right. We all make mistakes. Like, he ruined this woman's life. She became a national joke. He became a joke.
Yeah.
Like, why are we so forgiving of these people? And then why are we so surprised when a guy who sent pictures of his penis to a sideline reporter is now caught doing something, another despicable act? So,
yeah.
I mean, I have no interest in Brett Favre whatsoever.
Yeah. The recently retired Dale Hansen, the sportscaster here in Dallas, right? Yeah. Talked about, he said the prisons are filled with people whose only crime or guilty is they can't throw a football, they can't touchdown passes, they can't hit home runs.
Yep.
Because we tend to forgive people no matter what. And I have a
we say something in sports that drives me crazy, which is someone will do something and we'll say it in music too, and we'll say it in politics. Everyone in America deserves a second chance. America is a land of second chances. And it's like, maybe it is for you.
Yeah.
It's not for most people, because you're a political leader, or you can play guitar, or you can throw a spiral. It is for you. Well, it's not for most of us. So I hate that. Yeah.
No, I totally agree. And, I have a good friend who I do one of the guys, I'm part of a Game of Thrones podcast, and I was talking to him. I said, he went to Georgia. And I said, how are you feeling? He says, I look at my University of Georgia championship poster signed by Herschel Walker, and it just makes me sick.
It is insane. Wait, I know this isn't the theme of your podcast.
That's okay. No, please.
I have never seen a worse political candidate in my life, right? Like ever, literally ever. And I was around for David Duke running in Louisiana. And
I remember that too. Yes.
David Duke was, I mean, as despicable as a human being could be, but I guess you can make the argument, at least he held a job in his life. Like,
yeah,
it is insane that he right now is statistically tied to be a United States Senator because 40 years ago, he won the Heisman Trophy. And that's it. That is the only reason. There's no other reason. He is not qualified to freaking watch my dog. I mean, it's insane.
No. And,
it's insane.
And I remember the myth. You cover a little bit in your Cowboys book, right? The myth about Herschel doing thousands of sit-ups and, one meal a day. And I will tell you, we were watching they were a flag football game that the ticket was doing, and they had, the ticket talk show host, and they had different former Dallas, sports, people working, and we were surprised that Roger Staubach at his age was still incredibly competitive. And my son and I watched, and somebody handed the ball to Herschel Walker, and it's like he teleported. Like, how can you be that fast, that old, right?
Oh, yeah.
But that does not make it. I've read on Twitter, someone said their wife quoted verbatim what Herschel Walker was saying, and he says, I didn't know it, and I thought she was having a stroke. I was like, are you okay?
Yeah.
So yeah.
I actually, in a weird way, feel bad for the guy because I think he's an idiot. Like, I actually think he's an idiot and somewhat damaged along the way. And I think like he's a useful tool for Trump and the Republicans and it's just ridiculous. It's just, it's farce. Like, if he wins, he doesn't even have to win. It is farce. And I would say this if he were a Democrat. I swear to God, if this guy were a Democrat running in Georgia, I'd be like, this is our candidate. Like, this is the guy. It doesn't make any sense. So.
I absolutely agree. And then I just love the, a couple of the talking heads go, I don't care what he does. I just want to win the Senate. And it's like, okay, fine. Right. This is the way we're going to play. Great. Yeah, it's ridiculous. Jeff, thank you so much. What next concert? What do you got concert coming up wise? What do you got musically? You and your son going to see anything in the near future? Anything you recently went to that was fun?
Oh yeah, I don't have a show coming up, but I recently went. Now this is not on your radar, I don't think. But we went to see. We saw. It was a hip hop trio of Nas. If you don't know Nas, you should listen to Nas. Nas is
okay.
Great.
I'm writing it down.
Busta Rhymes and Wu-Tang, the Wu-Tang Clan. I know this isn't your genre, but
yeah,
it was one of the best shows I've ever got. And then we saw Kendrick Lamar a few weeks ago, who's a big time hip hop artist now. Mm-hmm. And it was great. You should give hip hop a shot. Modern hip hop right now is great. It's great. The best it's been in a long time. So
that's awesome. That's great. All right. If someone wants to reach you, how can they?
JeffPearlman.com or Twitter at Jeff Pearlman.
Okay. So we have the new book, The Last Folk Hero, The Life and Myth of Bo Jackson, available at your local bookstore. Support them, obviously, anywhere where you can find books. And are you doing a book tour or?
I'm doing a very small one in Alabama.
Okay.
Just I'm doing 4 stops in Alabama, and that's it. Nobody, book tours suck. Yeah,
they do. They do. Yeah. Though I'm always happy when a writer I like does that, where I get to go and, say, hey, I love your books. So
if you come to Alabama, I'll be there. So
there you go. Absolutely. Yeah. All right. The book will be out October 25th. Hopefully you DVR'd and Jeff on the Today Show. Have fun. Do you know what you're going to talk about? Do you have anything special lined up?
Jackson. No, I don't know.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
No, I'm going to do a magic trick, Jesse. I'm going to hey,
we're going to talk Springsteen.
We're going to talk Springsteen. This is for my buddy, Jesse. Jeff, thank you.
They're going to say, I just want to say the host is literally going to say, so let's talk about Bo Jackson. I'm going to say, let's not. Let's talk Bruce. I'm here to talk Bruce.
talk about them looking at you like, what's going on?
No,
That would be genius.
they're like this.
So,
Cut.
yeah, cut. Okay, let's try this again. Jeff, thank you so much for your time. I appreciate it. You are a joy, and I look forward to reading the book. Take care. Listeners, go get vaccinated, go get boosted, and let's try to be kind to each other, because that's how we're going to get through this. Thank you, Jeff. Thank you, listeners. We'll talk to you soon. Goodbye. This podcast is made possible because of my wonderful patrons. I want to thank Randy Brown, Rob Barnett, Crystal Strong, Bella Pori, John Munson, Betsy Hodges, Levi Petrie, Stephen Malio, Steve Rogers, Dale Hozak, Terry Smith, Anna Lynn, Chris Bloom, and Mary Thomas. I appreciate all of y'all kicking in your hard-won cash to help me spread the good news of Bruce Springsteen's music. I love y'all. Doing a podcast at times can be a one-way conversation, and I hate that. So please let me know what you like and don't like about the work I'm doing. You can reach the podcast via email at setlistingbruce@gmail.com. The show is on Twitter at SetListingBruce, and my personal Twitter is at JesseJacksonDFW. You can support the podcast by subscribing via your favorite podcast player and leaving us a review. The more reviews we have, the easier it is for people to find us. And please tell a friend about the podcast, especially if they love Bruce or music, because it will make a difference.
You just heard the fun talking, hard rocking, music loving, album ranking, fan thinking, joy spreading, lyric reading, story sharing podcast that is the one, the only Set Listing Bruce. The theme for Set Listing Bruce was written by David Rosen, used by permission.